Hi, I'm Judy Hens, Director of Educational Resource Associates. I want to talk with you today a little bit about readiness skills. Over the course of the last 10 years, the Common Core has indicated that kids need to read at a certain speed, but more importantly, they read by sight rather than the phonics method that was invented so many years ago. With the high pressure and test taking, I find a lot of kindergartens are not doing the readiness skills that get kids ready. And one of the skills that is taught to get kids used to learning the alphabet and reading by sight is visual skills, visual perceptual skills. It's not an eye test. The first one I'd like to show you is the children have to learn their alphabet at such a young level. But this would be an example, and I've just put this up for you, of what I call visual discrimination. A lot of students who have difficulty have not yet have the ability to look at different shapes and say which two are alike and which two are different. So if that's a problem with them, they have, of course they have trouble with identifying numbers and the letters of the alphabet. This even gets more sophisticated in trying to determine which two are alike there. Lots of reversal happening there. So if you have a child that is not picking up sight reading, this could possibly be the reason. I want to show you another skill about visual discrimination. This gets a lot more sophisticated. The previous one is pretty concrete, but this looks at finding shape. It doesn't even have to be, or a letter over here, and going across the page and being able to tell what matches that. In learning the letters of the alphabet, you have to match those things before you can easily recognize them. And so some of the children might just look at the first letter and choose that one rather than track all the way across and have to match. So that's letter E. This is a small a, does the same thing, you have to track across. Now here's an example of just using a figure, and actually the black and whites are, it's quite difficult because it's a matter of flipping black and whites, but a student who's beginning sight reading should be able to do that. Here is a P, and this is one of the most difficult one, because if you look at this and this, he could possibly transpose each individual letter, so he should be drilled in that, or think it's a G or even an A. Here is another good, here's the R, and it came right next door, and these are all the choices he could look at. Now this is another figure, and actually this is quite tricky for children, because you can see over here it's just flipped on the other side. And again, should be able to do this before they get into word recognition. So we've started with a word recognition here. This is the word shall. Unfortunately, kids today, when they sight read, are not trained to look at the whole word. And someone might just look at the SH sound and choose the word ship. But actually, they should be able to go all the way across the page to discriminate that. This is a skill over the years that was for first graders, and it's not really taught anymore in pre-kindergarten or kindergarten programs. But these are skills that are so necessary to have any hope of being a sight reader. And this is another example also. If you look at this could be confusing. This one they don't touch. That could be confusing. Getting down to the words horse, you can tell most of the kids will choose house. Same with enough. So this is a pretty good example of what children should be able to do when they're sight reading, before sight reading. I'm not saying, folks, that this is appropriate for a pre-kindergartner or a kindergartner, but this is just in fact a skill that they need. Okay. Visual memory is another skill, and I just really want to show you what is expected if you're going to read by sight. I can give you a 5-second flash, take those away, and ask you to write them down. How many of you could write that down? Not many. Well, kids who have trouble reading by sight have very poor visual memory. which to me is okay because you can always use a sight reading approach and that will develop, or you can use a phonics approach that will develop in the auditory areas. So I want to just give you, though, before I move on, an example of what it's like for kids to have to learn to sight read. Now I'm going to play this game with you. I'm going to give you some sight words. This word is fast. This word is the. This word is dog. This word is runs. This word is this word is jump. And this word is can. And the last word I have here is he. Okay, this is often how a student has got to learn to read in even pre-kindergarten now. Totally inappropriate. But I'm going to mix these up. Okay. And I'm going to ask you to recall what that word is. Pay attention when I'm having you do this to how you feel. Are you distracted? Is your leg moving? Are you focused on this? And is it just a blank for you? Okay? So that word is, say it to yourself. And for all of you who tried it, that word is jump. This is exactly what kids see when they don't have knowledge of the alphabet. Can, that word is can. Let's see if you can remember this one. Do you remember what that word is? Again, pay attention. Are you losing interest? Do you want to get up and get a drink? That word is he. Fast. The dog runs. So now they may be sent home to you and you put them on flashcards, okay? And the child sits there and you ask him to read that word. And he looks at it blank. Because you either are able to read that whole word, there is no unlocking process that's even going to give you a clue to what that word could be. And thus is the frustration of all these young readers. We'll try one more. Anybody remember that? I have it upside down so you probably won't. There you go. Anybody remember jump? Okay, I won't go through the rest, but I want to just show you the next step. So a child is expected to read these things without an unlocking process, which is decoding or phonetically sounding out. But this would be the next step. This is a story from those very words. And so I'd like a volunteer here for somebody to read that. Again, pay attention. Are you losing focus? Are you looking out the window? Are you just mad? Well, for those of you who don't remember, it comes from these flashcards. This says, the dog runs fast. Okay? It says the dog runs fast. And if you're in a typical classroom, they're going to say, well, but read it fluently, read it faster. You already cannot read it, and now they want you to do it faster. Okay? Here's the second sentence. He can jump, is what it says. How many of you could read that from these flashcards? But this is typical. So maybe you couldn't read that. So the reading instruction says, well, look at the picture. Well, looking at the picture isn't reading. So this says, the dog runs fast. Can you imagine the frustration your children have without having a phonics or an unlocking process? I want to go back, since now you may have some understanding of what your kids go through and why they don't read. But I want to go back to some auditory skills that used to be part of readiness skills when children went to kindergarten. Auditory discrimination is hearing the differences between sounds. It's a normal, natural function that can be changed. If your child has a history of ear infections, tubes in his ears, unclear language, he may have trouble with discrimination. And I'm gonna go through just a couple of ways that auditory discrimination can be taught. At the very base, you can use the sounds of animals. A sheep goes baa and a cow goes moo. Are those the same or not the same? And with kids with auditory problems, you would be surprised how many kids may not even see the difference between that. Clapping patterns is another way. Which one is loud? Which one is soft? That can help. Using words that you say are the same, and I often recommend you start with your child's name. If your name is Ashley, you start with your child and say, are these words alike? Ashley, dog. Do those things sound alike? Start that low, okay? And most kids should be able to do this, and if they can't, you need to kind of prompt them. Then get into some harder words, but take a step. You might say corner door or corner cover. That's getting a little closer. Then work your way all the way up to the tough things. Shall, shell, pin, pen. But the best thing to train discrimination is repetitive sound mastery. When children go as quickly as they can, and it's abba, adda, a-o. Just saying those sounds will impact their ability to process. Okay. The other thing I want to talk to you about is auditory memory skills. Auditory memory can be taught, particularly when a child is young. A good way that was developed back when you might have gone to school was kids were routinely taught to memorize nursery rhymes. I don't even see that anymore. But auditory processing is holding on to information. Okay, so let's say you have some auditory memory difficulties. That means you have trouble following directions. You may have a very short attention span because as it's required to hold on to information you gave up a long time ago. When I have the opportunity to test children who may have auditory discrim problems or auditory processing problems, I often compare this to our consultation that I am doing in English. And I say, for your child, it's just like he's in the classroom and the teacher is speaking French. And it just so happens my production guru is named Morgan, and she speaks French. And I want to give you an example of that. And keep in mind that these kids have auditory problems and maybe auditory memory information.
Hi, my name is Morgan, and I'm a teacher here at ERA, and I grew up in France, so I'm going to teach you a little bit of French, but I won't use any English, so good luck understanding. Bonjour, je m'appelle Morgane, et je vais vous apprendre comment dire votre prénom en français. Alors, vous allez dire « je m'appelle » et vous dites votre prénom.
I actually laughed when I heard Morgan saying these things because this is truly how your children perceive language and experience language when they have processing problems. Do you see how frustrating that is? Now, I had college French, and it's been a long time, so at least I understood the word bonjour, but that's really not part of much of the lesson. And your kids are like that. It's the very same. Way in the past, though, when we did readiness, we often did language training, which would serve to really facilitate greater understanding. But that's just not done today, and we just assume that because a child can talk, that his language is okay, and that's not the case. So the last thing I'm going to talk about, and I'm going to make this very short, is the visual motor development. Do you remember all the things you can do for that? Dot to dots, following mazes, coloring and cutting, were all things that were taught previously to writing the letters of the alphabet. So when you have children in even kindergarten, they're often encouraged to journal or write stories. Very frustrating because a lot of the kids can't even find the line. It's not only very frustrating, it's also very discouraging to kids. So, what I'm going to tell you is these are the issues that we are going to begin to work with in WizKid Academy. WizKid Academy is something that I have invented that I'm hoping that it will change the futures of these children. I had a completely accredited kindergarten for 2.5 decades. And when Common Core came along, I knew I didn't want to continue. Well, for the last 10 years, I've seen 4- and 5-year-olds failing kindergarten, failing pre-kindergarten because they cannot sight read. And it's truly devastating. So WizKid Academy is going to invent, and I have invented, a lot of things that will help these kids handle the very poor curriculum when they go to school. And I'm going to look forward to telling you about that as we do other podcasts. So I thank you for your time today. Like this and share it. Then I'll know you're serious. But I've appreciated your time today. Don't forget WizKid Academy opening April 1st. It can be used as a daycare. It's the price of a daycare, but it's a wonderful school that has wraparound care in the morning and in the evenings. Thank you.